All right, so today let's check out ground loops, AC ground loops. When we interconnect gear, we get that hum and buzz. And in order to do that, I've created my ground loop creation device. And that is a dimmable lamp. See it here, I'll bring it up. And it's plugged into this outlet. Now this outlet on the bottom here has actually got the neutral switched with ground. So this lamp is drawing current between the hot and the ground, which is going to force the ground to have noise. And since this has a little dimmer in it, we're going to get dimmer noise on the ground. Now, ground loops are caused when we have multiple paths to ground and current traveling through those paths. If we had a whole bunch of different paths to ground, but no difference in potential, no noise on it, just everything's rock solid, there's nothing to loop. It's just all going to be grounded. If we have a noisy ground, but everything is plugged into that noisy ground exactly the same point, we usually won't have issues if it's not too noisy, and that will be fine too. But if we have noise induced on the ground in one location, and the other location is closer to the grounding source, and there's less noise or more noise on it, now we have this noise traveling from one point to the other. That in itself doesn't create a problem either. But when we connect an audio cable as well, so we have an AC ground over here that's quiet, an AC ground over here that's noisy, and we've got gear plugged into both of those locations, and then we run an audio cable between them. The audio cable is going to carry some of that noise through it, and that's going to get induced into our equipment and cause us the problem. So I'm going to show you a few of those things, and we can listen to and test this out. So the first thing I want to do is test my ground loop noise creator. All right, so I've got the Behringer wing over here, and you can hear that. I've got this little analog console here, we can hear that. And I don't have a lot of gain on this, and let's see what happens when I turn on the lamp. We can hear hum and buzz because of the ground loop. Now, I've got this console plugged into this extension cord here, and then it's going into this white cord, this Romex, coming into here, and the other console. So this would be like monitor position, this would be like front of house, and we've got some noise induced at front of house. It's not purely the noise that's the issue, and we can test that. If we plug the monitor console, or we plug this console into here, to where the noisemaker is, and we give it a second to warm up. Now, when I turn on the noisemaker, let's wait for the wing. It's still making the same amount of noise, but we don't hear it because we don't have a ground loop. Everything's plugged into the same noisy ground source. Let's plug this back in over here. Also, if I take the front of house console and I plug it into this cable here, which is also plugged into the same place here, like running a front of house AC cable, and I turn on the noisemaker, again, we're quiet. So this really wants to see, the gear really wants to see all of the equipment plugged into the same place. If you plug it into a different place and there's no noise in the ground, we're okay as well. But when noise gets induced into the ground and we're plugged into different spots, that's when the issue happens. And there it is. So what can we do about it? Well, one thing we can do is run the AC cable so that it all plugs into the same spot. We also want to make sure that there's no crossover ground. Like you might run this cable out to front of house or they run conduit out the front of the house, but that conduit is tied into other conduit and touching other grounds, which then dirties this ground up, and we end up with this again. So it has to be a super clean, isolated ground that makes it out, and all the gear spiders off of this big star. That's the best way to do it. What about ground lifts? We could try a ground lift out front. So we got this buzz. Let's go ahead and fire that up. So let's try the audio ground lift. This has got pin 1 lifted. Well, that's terrible. The audio ground's not there. What happens? One thing we could do is here's a ground wire connected to the console. It didn't work great, but it quieted it up. I've seen consoles a long time ago from companies that had a mini cam coming off the back, and they'd run those grounds into a star point to try and reduce some of that. But nowhere near as quiet as it was using a proper grounding technique with the star ground. What about a transformer? Let's give that a shot. So here is a cool little Cinemag transformer. And we'll put that in there. And we'll plug it in here. Listen to that, it's quiet. A transformer offers us isolation. The problem is electronic inputs, even if you lift the ground, they're not totally isolated. They're referenced to ground. The only way to get true isolation, or one good way to get true isolation, is through a transformer. Well, this is great, except it can be expensive to put a transformer on every single input when you do this. On the other hand, carrying some transformer ISO boxes to solve these ground issues is a wise part of your traveling kit or your sound system. What else can we do? Well, grounding everything to the same star point, isolating it. There is another way, but it's not recommended and can be extremely unsafe unless it's dealt with properly. And that would be to use an AC isolation. So let's go ahead and fire that up. We got our noise. And this is kind of a problem because it's really easy just to put a ground lift tab and problem solved. Now we've lifted the AC ground at the front of house console. We are now grounding this console through the audio cable. So we went from a nice 12 gauge or 14 gauge or whatever wire was running to this, is running to this box that's offering safety, and now we're using the shield of this mic cable for safety. If there is a problem, if there's a short inside, this cable could go up in smoke. It's not adequate. One thing we can do to solve that is to add additional ground wire. So if I was to have an additional wire run along with the snake that connected to this console, a screw on the back, or went to a special box, the ground tab on this little isolation, it's got a little metal tab here. That is for finding an alternate ground. So that's what this would do, is this would be your alternate ground, and you would attach a wire to that, and then you'd be back to safe again. Not necessarily a pretty picture or the way to do it, but that is, if done properly and safely, a method of solving that. Cool. So let's go back to how we were in our more safe environment here. We can get rid of this. There's our hum and buzz. Let's go ahead and plug our console into our front of house AC cable. And now we have a nice, safe system, and we've solved that ground loop. Very cool. Using a star ground, making sure that ground does not touch any other grounds once it's left its primary heart of the star location. And you should be stable with these ground loops.